Hey everybody, welcome back. Mike from Spectre Comics. Today I wanted to talk about The Batman. I just got back from seeing the new movie at the theater, so while I'm drawing The Dark Knight in the background, I wanted to give my general thoughts and impressions of the movie, and then later on in the video I'll actually talk about the drawing that I'm doing. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would encourage you to go see it before watching this video because there will be spoilers, and then come back and we can talk in the comments section about our general thoughts. So first thing I want to say is I generally liked the movie a lot. I thought it was great, and that surprised me because when I first heard Robert Pattinson was playing Batman, I wasn't that thrilled about that, but I guess anytime they announce a new actor playing Batman, I wasn't that excited about Ben Affleck either. People generally kind of raise an eyebrow and like, is he the right person to play this character? But generally, I thought he did a good job. He was dark, moody. He did feel very young, which, you know, Batman in this movie is only 2 years into his career, so he should be young, kind of green at the job. And I thought that that whole aspect was conveyed, and I thought he did a really good job playing a new Batman kind of on the job. And I think the arc of the movie was not just about, you know, solving a crime, but kind of the growth of Batman going from a vengeful character to a character of hope, being a hero. And that you see that kind of theme permeating throughout this movie. And I thought that was great because you saw real growth from going from the dark side to kind of a lighter side. And again, the movie was almost 3 hours long, so they had a long period of time to tell this story. Now, a lot of people complained about the length and thought the story meandered a lot, but I was so engrossed with the story that I didn't actually feel like it lasted that long. Now, at the risk of sounding like a grumpy old man, the only aspect of the movie that bothered me was the 5 teenagers sitting in front of me that wouldn't sit down and stay off their phones.
And that's the way it was, and we liked it. We loved it.
Now, there's been a lot of Batman movies in the past, but this version of Batman felt a lot different than many of the other films that we've seen before. For instance, it focused more on the detective story aspect rather than the superhero aspect. And I thought that was great because it was a new kind of unique twist on the original origins of the character. And he was a master detective. He was very smart. Being very young and within his first couple of years of being Batman, he really focused on solving the crime. And he was working closely with Gordon, who was not yet commissioner. He's just, I believe, a detective. It was also interesting that he was really Batman most of the movie. There was only like, I would say 10% of the movie, 10 to 15% of the movie where he was actually Bruce Wayne. And because his full-time job from the movie's aspect was that he was being Batman. And again, I said a minute ago that he started out as a vengeful character. When they asked him who he was, he didn't say, I'm Batman. He said, I'm vengeance. So his character was motivated by the vengeance on the crime which killed his parents. They didn't even actually go into his backstory of how his parents were killed. We didn't have to relive that. We've seen that plenty of times. It was just assumed we all knew that part of the story, but we also know that that's one of the huge motivators of Batman as a character, why Bruce Wayne became Batman. Now, this movie did feel darker and grittier than other Batman movies as well. Most of the movie was filmed in the dark. It was usually raining, and wearing that heavy costume completely soaking wet probably was difficult. It did feel, I mean, they were really trying to set a mood in the city of Gotham, how it was dark and it was always, you know, it always felt like bad things were happening. There was this criminal underworld, and, you know, there was many layers to the evil in the city, from the politicians to the corrupt police to the crime syndicate, and then to the ultimate villain of this movie, which is the Riddler. Now, the Riddler was an interesting character. He truly felt psychotic, and we find out through his actions that he was actually targeting specific individuals that had become corrupted, which led to the cesspool of misery and despair in the city of Gotham. Now, there was an interesting dynamic between the Riddler and Batman because he kind of felt like he was on the same plane as Batman, as we find out later in the movie. He talks about having the same goal. Now, obviously, their motivations are different, and obviously their methods are different. Batman doesn't kill anybody, whereas the Riddler would kill indiscriminately. But by using a series of clues, he was leading Batman to reveal and find out and root out the villains in this underworld. Now, there was a portion of this movie where you kind of felt that the Riddler had discovered Batman's secret identity, and they lead you down this path by the things that the Riddler does and says, and aspects of his little lair that made you think, oh my God, he knows who Batman really is. But then we find out later that he didn't, and he was trying to be kind of extend a hand, an olive branch to Batman, saying, hey, we are fighting for the same cause. We're trying to root out corruption. And Batman's insistent that I am not you. I don't do what you do. And the Riddler is actually offended by this, which I thought was funny because you never would look at these two characters on the same plane. Even though there's this grain of truth to the idea that they are motivated by the same thing, which is rooting corruption out. It's just obviously their methods are very different. So let's talk about Batman himself. The movie starts on Halloween night. The story is based on the comic book story, The Long Halloween. Batman's about 2 years into his career. He has a relationship with Gordon, but Gordon's not yet commissioner yet. There is a bat signal located in a remote location, which allows these two to communicate. You can see from the first interaction between the cops and Batman that most of them don't trust him. As I mentioned earlier, he's basically known as a vigilante, and he's not welcome at crime scenes. He is allowed to come into the first crime scene because one of the clues on site was a letter from the Riddler addressed to the Batman. There is a theme through most of this movie where most of the GCPD seems corrupt and on the payroll of somebody in the crime underworld. We do find out that there are a lot of corrupted police, and it becomes an aspect that between Batman and Gordon, they only trust each other. They don't know who has been bought off, who they can trust. It feels like everybody's bought off. So they kind of have to work a little bit in secret in order to get this crime solved. So this version of Batman did not use a ton of gadgets like we've seen other Batmans use. There was no batarangs, but he did use the grappling gun once. Batman's suit became a wingsuit, so he can glide off the top of a building. His chest insignia is kind of like a tactical knife, so he was able to use that. But I did think it was cool that he actually wore these contacts, which could record what he was seeing and hearing, and then he could go and download that information, play it back, and use it to kind of re-examine the crime scene in real time. So that was a really unique, interesting thing that they added to this movie that I don't think I've ever seen before in a Batman story. So the Batmobile was really cool. It was basically a muscle car with a jet engine, led to a really epic chase scene between the Penguin and Batman. The entire going on the highway, the exploding tanker truck, and then Batman's Batmobile coming through the fire, ramming into the Penguin's car. We've all seen this scene in the trailer, and then the Penguin flipping upside down, being trapped as Batman was walking towards him. You can see how intimidating that would be if you're trapped in that car, and the sound and the music really set the tone of that scene, making it feel really epic. So some of the interesting things that kind of made this feel different than other Batman movies: Bruce Wayne did not live in Wayne Manor. Wayne Manor had been an abandoned old mansion that was turned over as an orphanage and then abandoned years later. So it was in the movie, but obviously Bruce Wayne did not live there. He basically lived at the top of Tribune Tower in Chicago. So there was aspects of Chicago and New York which kind of made up Gotham City. I think they liked the aspect of using the Gothic architecture. So the top of Tribune Tower was where Bruce was living. The Batcave was essentially an abandoned subway terminal. So no Batcave under Wayne Manor like we're used to. So those two aspects were a lot different than what we've seen before. Not that they were necessarily bad, but just different. Alfred was played by Andy Serkis. I thought he did a great job. You just didn't see enough of him. He wasn't in the movie that much. He was in an aspect of the movie that kind of led to Bruce finding out a little bit about his past. Zoe Kravitz played Selena Kyle / Catwoman. She did a good job too, other than the one woke phrase she used about white privilege, which seemed totally unnecessary in this movie. John Turturro played Carmine Falcone, and I just remember him from the Transformers movie as kind of a wacky, goofy character. He did a good job as the crime boss. He did feel kind of intimidating, and that he would put a hit on you if you kind of crossed him the wrong way. Now, the interwoven story, again, of the Riddler kind of tying back to Falcone, kind of drawing him out into the light so that he could be killed by the Riddler later in the movie, was an interesting dynamic because Falcone basically thought he was untouchable. He had bought off a lot of the people in the city, the police, politicians, the DA. There was a lot of corrupt people, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, how Falcone was kind of tied to all of this. He even made Bruce Wayne feel that his father had been corrupted and that he had been lied to his whole life about his father being a good man. And luckily, we find out that he was a good man, and being a good man actually led to him getting killed. That was a whole interesting aspect of the development, again, of Bruce Wayne, and then having faith a little bit that his father was not a corruptible man, that he was a good man, tried to do good things, tried to do the right thing. And I think ultimately, as there's more Batman movies in this series of movies, that's going to kind of lead to Batman becoming the hero that Gotham needs him to be. So ultimately, I thought the movie was great. I would recommend seeing it if you haven't. It was really good. It's a very different take on the Batman character and the Batman kind of movies. It felt dark, gritty, more noir than other movies that did focus on the detective aspect, as I said earlier. But I thought it was great, and it was a unique take on the character. I definitely want to see more of this universe, and I can't wait for the next one. So let's talk about the drawing. Now, I did something in this picture that I usually don't do, and that's I actually sketched this on paper and scanned it into the computer. Normally in my drawing videos, I will do my sketches on a sketch layer within Photoshop on my tablet, but this time I actually was having trouble getting it down. I actually pulled out my sketchbook using my reference image. This image is from the comic book, The Court of Owls. Going back to the movie, there was some hints that Court of Owls may be an upcoming storyline. As we peel off the layers of the corruption in the city, it'll ultimately lead to the Court of Owls, and that would be a great kind of end cap to this trilogy. Anyway, getting back to the drawing, this picture that I'm referencing for this drawing is from the Court of Owls. I loved the picture, and I thought it was a dynamic image of Batman flying through the city on his grapple line. So I sketched it out on paper, scanned it into my computer. I'm drawing on a Wacom Cintiq 13 HD. I am drawing with Photoshop Elements 2022, and I'm actually, since I have already drawn the picture on pencil, this video is about the inking and the coloring of the image. A lot of the aspect of the drawing comes from the line weights and the creative use of the line work, and then the shades and shadows. Batman's dark figure comes in the dark, so there's a lot of shade and shadow on this character as I'm coloring him. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comment section below, and let me know what you thought of the drawing as well. Go ahead and follow my Instagram at Space Misadventures. This drawing will be posted there, so you can check it out a little closer. That is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you watching. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe to my channel. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.